Redline Logbook here to talk about the Miach Familia. Reason why I'm doing the Miach Familia is because I want to do all the familias that have some connection to the Hestia Familia first. And the Miach Familia were the first allies the Hestia Familia ever had. The story starts off with Miach, a simple god. He was a god of medicine up in the heavens, and he was rivals with Diancecht, another god of medicine. Of course, Miach was more civil about it. Diancecht just seems to hate Miach. And this rivalry continued on in the mortal world when they both descended down into Aurorio. When a god sets up in Aurorio, they have to file with the guild what kind of familia they're going to be. If they're going to be dungeon or they're going to be merchant. If they're a dungeon, like the Hestia Familia, they have to fulfill certain goals for the guild, especially as they become more and more powerful. Because Aurorio has to fulfill two major goals. One, getting to the bottom of the dungeon, and two, defeating the one-eyed black dragon. Now, if you decide to be a merchant, basically you just pay more taxes. You don't have to go into the dungeon, but it's going to cost you more to do business in Aurorio. And so Miach set up as a merchant. And so his family didn't actually have to go into the dungeon. They did anyway, but they didn't have to. They just had to fulfill their duty of making as much money as possible and producing magic potions to heal adventurers. So, Miach cares very much for the mortal races. He actually loves them more than most gods, and is actually a very kind and caring god who actually cares for his children and for complete strangers as well. Because of this, he has a bad habit of just giving his product away for free to adventurers that are injured or even just tired. And this has a tendency to just backfire for him, but at the same time, it made him very beloved throughout the city, especially during the Dark Age, when things were at its worst for Aurorio. Him and Diancecht were basically the two big healers of the city during the Dark Age, and they really saved a lot of people. And because of who Miach is as a man, this eventually got people to follow him to the point where he actually had a mid-ranked familia. Now, unlike the exploration familias where they rank you from I to S, depending on how powerful you are, merchant familias are based on how much tax money they're bringing in. So to be a mid-ranked familia means that they were bringing in a lot of money. They're doing a lot of good business. And this continued on until Naza got hurt. As I said, his familia did explore the dungeon even though they didn't have to. And as a result of this, they got swarmed by monsters. Naza was actually ripped apart. Her left arm was completely eaten. Even though she survived this, as a result, she had to get a replacement. Now, the Miach Familia weren't good enough to construct an entirely new arm for Naza. The only one who could do that was the Silver Saint of the Miach Familia. And as a result of this, Diancecht made sure to leave a massive debt to his rival. This massive debt led to the destruction of the Miach Familia, where pretty much everyone except for Naza decided they couldn't handle this anymore and left. And so the Miach Familia went from being a middle-rank familia to being one of the poorest in all of Aurorio. In fact, that's actually how he met Hestia. The two were so damn poor that they basically hung out in the worst bars as possible because they couldn't afford to pay for better drinks. And the two familias really hit it off. Hestia and Belle really liked Miach and Naza. Miach really liked them. And Naza really liked the fact that Belle was naive and she could take advantage of him. Naza has been a member of the Miach Familia since she was a little girl. In fact, the first interaction we have of her is when she's 12 during the 7 Days of Blood during the Dark Age. On the first day, Evilists committed atrocities across all of Aurorio, slaughtering tens of thousands of innocent people and adventurers. As a result of this, both the Miach Familia and the Diancecht Familia were basically on the front lines, administering as much aid to people as possible. Naza was 12 at the time, and she was basically running around for her familia members carrying supplies. And apparently, she had a love rivalry with the Silver Saint. Apparently, at 12 years old, they were both in love with Miach. I don't know about the Silver Saint's feelings for Miach anymore. It's been 7 years, but Naza still loves him. So he apparently has had a crush on the god since she was 12 at least. As Naza got older, she worked her way up to level 2, and of course she lost her arm and the whole familia fell apart. Now the reason why Naza didn't leave is one, because she was in love with Miach, but two, she's suffering from a crippling guilt of the fact that she feels like she ruined the Miach Familia, that it was her fault that he lost everything he had, and he's forced to live in poverty because of her. Obviously, Miach doesn't feel this way at all, but once again, Naza just can't get over this guilt. This guilt pushed her to do two things. One was good, one was not. The good thing is that it forced her to invent. She's actively and always testing out new recipes and ingredients to find a new invention, which she can then use to sell for lots of money to get Miach out of his debt. She has two known inventions. The first one is the stink bag. The stink bag is basically a concoction of who knows what, but it was so powerful that when Naza first smelt it, it caused her to lose consciousness. She successfully toned down the smell of it as much as possible, where it was still effective. And how is it effective? Well, it keeps monsters away. Because monsters have a stronger sense of smell than humans, this leads them to just keep their complete distance from this smell bag. And so if you carry it around in the dungeon, it will keep you safe from up to 15 meters. Its only two known weaknesses are, 1, if a monster has range greater than 15, either using magic or projectiles, the monster is still going to get you. And 2, it doesn't seem to work on monsters past the middle floors. The second thing she invented were dual potions. And the dual potion actually leads up to the second part of her personality developed because of the debt and the guilt. And that is the fact that she's an awful con woman who will screw over anyone. Since Naza first met Belle, she has been constantly overcharging him for everything. And the only reason she ever got caught is because Lily became Belle's supporter. And after they finished a job for Naza, the payment was 30 high-grade potions. Thing is, Lily's not an idiot. She's also not trusting like Belle. And also, she used to be a con man too. And so when she decided to test out the potion before accepting it, she realized it was not a high-grade potion. It was a low-grade potion with some coloring dye and some sweetener to it to make it taste like a high-grade potion. Miach was literally behind them working on more of his potions when he heard this, walked over, just looked at the potion. He didn't even have to test it like Lily did. He just looked at it and immediately bowed his head in apologies to Belle. This is where it's all revealed, Naza's feelings about the debt and the pain they're in, and the fact that they're about to lose their store because they're behind on multiple payments to Diancecht, and he's going to take their store as collateral. And after hearing all this, Belle then decides he wants to do whatever he can to help Naza, because the fact is, Miach does what Miach does, which is give Belle free potions all the time, constantly just giving out money to him whenever Hestia is in trouble, basically doing the things that piss Naza off, that piss everyone off if you work with him. And Belle knows that these two people are actually good people, even if Naza has been screwing him over. So the quest is to collect some blood source eggs that are on the surface. They're living right outside Aurorio in a forest. This is the last ingredient that Naza needs to make her dual potions. Naza can't do it herself because she fears monsters after what happened. After she gets the ingredient, she's then able to make the dual potion. She makes about an entire case of them. And then her and Miach go straight to Diancecht, and they basically form a business partnership with them where both stores will sell the dual potion. And what the dual potion does is it's one potion that restores both physical damage and mind. So you can burn through your magic and take damage physically, and then take one potion and you're back on your feet. It is completely revolutionary in the Danmachi universe. Even though Diancecht hates Miach with a passion, he cannot deny just how much money he can make off of this, and this basically becomes a permanent partnership between the two familias. This also leaves Naza completely indebted to Belle, to the point where she is now willing to risk her life and limb for him. She doesn't fall in love with him. She's still in love with Miach. It's not like that with all the other ladies in Belle's life. She just feels like Belle did something for her that she can never repay. Belle made it possible for her to pay back Miach, and that is priceless to her. Naza at this point is now willing to help out Belle and his team whenever they need her, as long as it's on the surface and doesn't involve monsters. So she helped out Belle whenever he was being attacked by the Paula Familia by acting as a sniper, and once more against the Freya Familia in the Great Faction War. Her powers and abilities are such. Naza is a level 2 from the majority of the story until after the Great Faction War, where she got to be a level 3. Her one development ability is Mixture, which allows her to increase the potency and power of her potions and anything else she creates. She has a magic called Darbal Dal, which she developed after losing her arm and going through her trauma. It basically inflicts her trauma onto another person as a debuff, weakening her opponent to almost an entire level's worth of status. The only downside is that it has some negative effects on her because it's a curse, and 2, it can only affect one opponent at a time. As for her greatest combat ability is that Naza is the greatest sniper in all of Aurorio, if not the world. She uses a bow, but because she's a level 2 and now level 3 adventurer, the draw force of that bow is on another level. A normal human couldn't even try to pull the string. And because of this, it allows Naza basically have a fire range equal to almost an entire city's length. Now that was her range back when she was a level 2. At level 3, she might actually be able to fire farther than all of Aurorio. Unless you have the speed to dodge her arrows, she can hit you no matter where you are. She's just that great of an archer. The main reason for this is the fact that she's a Shinthrope, which is a dog person, which increases her senses. And then on top of that, her increasing level also increases her senses. And so her eyesight is basically the scope of a sniper rifle. After the Apollo War game, 2 more people joined the Miach Familia, Daphne and Cassandra. Daphne is a very serious human who originally only cared for herself and Cassandra, mostly because she hated Apollo so much when she was part of his Familia. But after the war game and joining the Miach Familia, they basically became part of the Hestia Alliance, and she quickly realized that she actually likes these people. And they actually matter to her just as much as Cassandra does. As a result, she is basically Lily's mentor in being a commander. Lily naturally became the leader of the Hestia Alliance. As for Daphne, she basically became an advisor for Lily so she could, for the most part, fight on the front lines, but at the same time, when Lily needed it, aid in strategy. She's also a lot happier now that she's part of the Miach Familia because she's with a good god, she has a good family, and she's got really good friends. So Daphne is actually moving in the right direction in her life, the first time in a long time. As for her powers and abilities, she was a level 2 for a while until the expedition arc, where after that she became a level 3. Primarily, she's a frontline sword fighter, but at the same time a commander, and so she's quite good at handling an entire squad in battle. She has one known development ability, abnormal resistance, which allows her greater resistance to poisons and venoms and such. As for her magic, she actually has one spell, which is called Ramaru, which increases her speed and endurance. And on top of that, her rapier, called Fencer Lorate, is actually a magic item as well, which increases her magical output. To put this into perspective, just how fast she was when she uses this magic, during the bass fight with the Aquafina, she was given level boost and then she used this magic. So she went from a level 2 to level 3 plus increased speed, and she was now the fastest person on the battlefield, which is impressive because Aisha, a level 4, was on the battlefield. She has 2 skills as well, one being Elos Passion, which increases her speed when she's running away. It's basically her version of Escape, which is normally given only to a level 4 as a development ability. Her second skill is Luris Wrath, which just increases her endurance and defense to absurd levels. Whenever she gets hit or cut or anything, the damage that she takes turns into bark and her blood turns into sap. And when she used this ability at level 3 against a level 6 Hyene, he was cutting her over and over and over. He beat and battered her the entire battlefield, and she was still able to stand and fight. Hyene even mentioned that if this keeps going, her entire body is going to turn into a tree, but Daphne was willing to push through this and through the pain of being cut apart by a level 6 to defeat the Freya Familia. But the point is, this skill allowed her to do that. A level 3 was able to take a beating from a level 6 and stay standing for a certain period of time. Obviously, he eventually was able to cut her down, but still, this skill magnifies her defense to absurd levels, because it doesn't just give her increased defense or hardening, it literally turns her wounds into bark, basically as a pseudo-healing ability. And the skill doesn't use up any of her mind, so she's not even burning through her magic. The weakness is the fact that as she begins to be turned into a tree, basically, she's not able to move as well. And also, it takes a few days for her to go back to normal. And finally, Cassandra. Cassandra was originally a princess in a foreign land. When Apollo ended up seeing her, falling in love with her, while she was still young, by the way, and basically chased her around the world until she finally gave up and joined his Familia. After his Familia was dissolved after the war game, she joined the Miach Familia as their healer. I wouldn't say her personality is sour, it's just very depressed, and the reason for that is her experience with people just not believing her. She was granted the ability of foresight. She has the ability to see the future in these prophetic dreams that are very symbolistic in nature, and she has to interpret these symbols, and then with this she can then change the future. The problem is, no one ever believes her. That's just part of the ability of seeing the future. The funny thing is, the gods actually do recognize she has the ability of foresight, and even when they talk about it in front of a mortal, the mortal doesn't understand what they're talking about. We know this because Hestia and Miach actually had a conversation about it to one another in front of Naza, and Naza's only response to it was, "What are these two talking about? I don't get it." So it literally is part of the magic of foresight, is that no one will ever believe that you have foresight. Because no one ever believed her, even her best friend Daphne, she developed a personality of someone who's very meek and mild and tries not to get on anyone's nerve. Funny thing is that thanks to Belle, her personality begins to change, where she's now more open. The reason for this is because she has a premonition about where her pillow is. Of course, Daphne doesn't believe her, but they still go to their former mansion, which now owned by the Hestia Familia, to get the pillow. She tells Belle about her premonition. Belle actually doesn't believe her, but Belle does think that she's she's just remembering something in a dream, which he says happens to everyone. So that just makes sense. So he goes off, he does find the pillow where she said it was, hands it to her, and at this point, Cassandra thinks that Belle is the only person that believes her when she says she can see the future. He doesn't. In fact, if you actually read the story, every time Belle is told one of her prophecies, he says in his head that he doesn't believe her, but he doesn't directly say it to her face because he has a reason for why he needs to consider her feelings or whatever. The point is, it's always a misunderstanding where Cassandra thinks Belle believes her. And because of this, she, one, falls in love with Belle, but more importantly, this gives her the confidence to actually stand up for herself and basically tell everyone, no, my prophecies are real and we should be listening to them. We should be trying to solve them. She even stands up to Daphne, her best friend, who she always gives up against. And at this point, Daphne actually gives in to Cassandra and decides to go along with whatever she's saying. And Cassandra actually learns that Daphne, this whole time, actually does care about her as an equal. Because up to this point, Cassandra kind of thought of herself as a burden, but when she realized that Daphne full-on respected and cared about her opinion and such, yeah, this gave Cassandra a lot of confidence. Now, Cassandra hasn't completely changed. She's still very squishy in her emotions, but she is growing and being able to be more assertive and actually work towards being more assertive. Now, besides being in love with Belle and Daphne being her best friend, everyone else that's a part of the alliance, she seems to have a very positive, neutral relation with all of them. In fact, she actually really likes the Hestia Familia. She was the one who tried to convince Daphne to join the Hestia Familia, but when it was revealed that the Hestia Familia have a massive debt, Daphne said no. And Cassandra didn't really argue with that. She understood that no. Which means Cassandra's also very reasonable in certain situations. And finally, she has a weird relationship with the Xenos. So when Ween first got to the surface, went on a rampage because her Weaver tear was removed from her head, the Xenos fought with the Loki Familia. And in that fight, the Amaraj Xeno and the Hellhound Xeno, Arliss and Helga, end up getting hurt, and they were discovered by Cassandra because of one of her premonitions. Now, when she found them, she decided to save them, took them back to the Miach home, and nursed them back to health until the big event that led to the Xenos finally going back to the dungeon. Now, Arliss and Helga do not speak human, they can only speak monster. And as a result of this, Cassandra just thought she was taking care of really cute monsters this whole time, and is actually extremely afraid of them still. The whole reason why she took care of them, even though she's afraid, is because of the premonition, where it told her that she needs to save a rabbit's foot, the Almirage, and by doing so, a black wave will be crushed. This ended up resulting later on when they were in the lower floors, when they were trapped, and finally, at the end of it, when they were about to die, the Xenos showed up and saved them. Thanks to Helga's amazing nose as a hellhound, they were able to find Cassandra, and because she formed a bond with these two, Cassandra is still scared of them though. So in the end, her prophecy came true, like it always does. By saving this rabbit and hellhound, she was able to save herself and all of her friends from immediate death, just way down in the future. Power-wise, Cassandra, for the most of the story, was a level 2 up until after the expedition, where that whole thing boosted her up to a level 3. She has the generic strength and speed of a level 3, but she's not a fighter like Daphne is. Cassandra is a healer, and she's probably top 3 healers in the entire area of Aurora. And the reason why she's top 3 is because of her 2 healing magics. The first one is pretty standard. It's called Stolite. It heals and also restores stamina to a wide-ranging area. Pretty normal. But her second spell, Cure Afflictus, is able to remove the effects of poisoned and curses. She doesn't realize it can actually remove curses though. But the ability to remove poison and curses, that's the big one, is a rare ability to have for a healer. If you want to remove a curse, a bad curse, then normally you gotta go to the Silver Saint. The fact that Cassandra has that ability is insane. Unfortunately, she just doesn't know she can do that, and it's an even bigger shame because she's part of Miach Familia now, which means she can really help with their business if she, was just curing curses. There's a lot of money in that, because that means you don't have to go to Diancecht Familia for Silver Saint. You could find someone who can charge a cheaper price, like the Blue Pharmacy, the Miach Familia. But once again, Cassandra doesn't know that she can do that. But you know what's funny? Miach knows she can do that because he reads her back to do a status update, which means he's read the spell multiple times. He just doesn't tell her. Why? Don't know. And that's not the only thing weird about Cassandra. Besides the fact that she has an ability she doesn't know she has, Foresight, she also has 2 skills, one of which even the god doesn't know what it is. Okay, one isn't actually a skill, it's a development ability called Treatment. And what it does is just increase the power of her healing magic. But she does have a skill, and Miach calls it 5-Dimension Tria. And here's the thing. That's a made-up name by Miach. He can't read it. He doesn't actually know what the name is. He doesn't know what the skill does. because he doesn't understand it at all. Because unlike every other fauna, it's not written in the language of the gods, hieroglyph, nor is it written in any actual human language, which the gods know all of them. It is a completely new language that a god cannot read. So whatever this skill is, whatever it can do, it will most likely involve defeating the one-eyed black dragon, because it is just that big of a mystery. Now, Cassandra isn't always needed for healing, but she still needs to help out on the battlefield. Because she's a healer, she's usually in the back, so she handles support with her bow and arrow. And she's trained with it, basically, since she's been in the Apollo Familia, so she actually is quite good with the bow. She's not as good as her captain, Naza, who is basically the best marksman in all of Auroreo, but Cassandra still has like a 70% hit rate. So the Hestia Alliance can rely on her as a sniper in the back. And she is a level 3, so the pullback on that bow has a lot of force to it. And finally, her main equipment she uses alongside her bow is the Holy Crystal Rod, which is her magic wand. This magic staff gives her increased power whenever she's casting her magic. Pretty standard for a magic staff. She did make one alteration to it. After joining the Miach Familia, she ended up carving the Miach symbol onto it, which is nice because the magic staff that she got from Apollo, she immediately threw in the trash, which means she actually does feel at home with the Miach Familia. And that is the Miach Familia, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe, give it a thumbs up so you enjoy more Danmachi and anime things. Thank you, and have a great day.